To another video. My name is Fabio, and today we're going to look at animating a bouncing ball across the screen. I'm going to be using the Animator's Survival Guide. They have a nice section in there on bouncing balls. It is a really helpful book for learning animation. So bouncing a ball across the screen rather than just up and down, it gets a little more complicated because there are a few more things that we need to think about. So rather than just thinking of the squash and stretch and the timing and spacing, now we need to pay attention to the timing of where the ball is on the screen, how much force the ball has in its bounce because it's not uniform anymore, and finally we want to think about the arcs of motion for the ball as well. All these things can make it a little more complicated when we actually get into our animation. So what I'm going to do to make this easier is I'm going to make a guide for where my ball hits on the floor and for the arcs of the bounces. So I'll start up here and I'll draw sort of an arc to the floor like this. This is where the ball's gonna hit the floor. Then I'll come back up, draw another arc. This is where the ball is gonna be at its highest point. Just remember here to make sure that your arcs aren't the same size, that they're getting smaller as the ball bounces along. Another tip is if you take your point from the top and run it all the way to the bottom, the line should match up with the top of your arc, roughly. Notice the space from each hit is getting smaller as well. As the ball bounces along, everything is getting smaller and shorter. So now draw your guides for 5 bounces of the ball. Once that's done, you should have something that looks like this. So we have our arcs planned out and where the ball is going to bounce. Now we got our guide made and our timing done, now we can focus on things like the spacing of the ball and squashing and stretching. So we have a good foundation, let's keep going. So I went ahead and timed out where each hit is going to take place on my timeline. The first one I want it to be on frame 9, the second one is going to hit on frame 18, the next one on frame 25, 31, and 37. So just like the space is getting shorter, the amount of frames is also less. So you don't have to do these exact frames, but just remember the amount of frames gets smaller as you go along. Now I've gone in like roughly halfway between these frames and I've marked where the ball is going to be at its highest bounce. 1 to 9, then 13 it's back up to the top, 18, 21, and so on. So you can use this timing if you would like to make it a little easier, or you can go and create your own. So we're pretty much almost done. Now is the part we already know, right? The spacing and the squash and stretch. So we know that at the beginning, the ball is moving slower, so the drawings are going to be closer together. And as the ball falls down to the ground, the drawings are going to be farther apart because it's actually speeding up. And of course, because the ball's bouncing across the screen, this effect is going to be less and less as the ball comes to a stop. It's going to be stretching less and squashing less as we go across our timeline. Let's keep going. So in our previous video of the ball just bouncing up and down, the exact same rules are going to apply, right? So as the ball comes to the top, it's going to slow down, and as it is getting closer to the floor, it's going to speed up. So we want to draw it closer together at the top and farther apart towards the ground. So I'm going to just start with red on frame 1. I'll do this so we can see everything. And I'll just draw a rough circle up here at the top. And to keep my ball size consistent, I'm going to do pose to pose. So I'm going to go to frame 9 now, because that's kind of my next keyframe. And I'll draw the ball as it hits the floor. So it's going to be a little squished. So we're going to shrink it down and pull it out as well. Then we'll go to frame 13, where the ball's back up to its regular size. And so on. So go now, fill in all your key poses. So like frame 9, 13, 18, 21, 25, 28, 31, 34, and 37, you should have something that looks like this. Okay, so it's playing now. Let me just scrub through so you can see. So drops, let's turn off our onion skin as well. So the ball falls on frame 9, it's squashed quite a bit, comes back up, frame 13, frame 18, it hits the ground again, but if you notice, we didn't squash it as much because the ball is moving slower. There's not as much force. Right, back up on 21. 25, we're barely squashing the ball anymore because it's going so slow. It's not going as high. We just need to fill in our in-betweens, and then we should have a nice bouncing ball. So here I'm going to turn on my onion skin around 5 spaces so I can see what's happening. I'm going to go roughly in the middle, so like around frame 4, add a new keyframe, a new drawing, and I'll draw somewhere around the middle. This ball is going to be stretching a little bit because it's on its way down. Something like this. So when we're doing this, a thing to remember is that the space between the ball bouncing should never really be uniform because it's always slowing down or speeding up. So now let's go to frame 2, new drawing, and draw the ball really close to frame 1. Okay, frame 3, a little bit farther, and a little bit stretching. So if we turn off our onion skin, now we have the ball is falling and speeding up. Now we can probably work straight ahead from 5 to 10. Right, so it's stretching even more, just like this. Frame 6, we'll have the ball touch the floor as it's stretching. And then we'll have the ball kind of coming back to its original position before it hits. So now if we play this, right, I kind of messed up my timing. So I have an extra drawing here. The beautiful thing about working digitally is I can just backspace it. So now my timing is adjusted. So if we play up to this frame, our ball's starting to bounce. Let's have the ball come up now. New drawing, onion skin on. So now as it comes up, it's still moving quick. So it's gonna stretch. Next frame, it's gonna slow into frame 13. So now it's getting a little slower. And it's not stretching as much until it is really close to frame 13. Same thing, I'm a little off on my timing, it's not really working, but I can just subtract my frame, right? So don't think of your timing as like set in stone, you can change it to make it work. Let's keep going now. We're on frame 11, frame 12. The ball is slowly falling down. So in the air, it's gonna hang a little bit, right? So we'll draw it close. And then we're gonna start to stretch it as it speeds up towards the ground. Right, we can really stretch it here, and we might as well add another frame in. So now if we play up to this point, we should get a nice bounce. So now, if you want, you can fill in the rest of your arcs using the same principles, right? So slowing at the top and speeding up as it hits the floor. And you should have something when you're done that looks like this. And there you have it, guys. That is your bouncing ball moving across the screen. So hope you guys had some fun. Try it yourself, experiment, because you can play around with the spacing and the timing to get some different effects. So if we shorten the timing and really reduce the squash and stretch, we can make the ball look heavy. Or how about extend the timing and make the arches really high to give it more of a golf ball or a bouncy ball feel. Right, so really the possibilities are endless. So get out there, experiment, have some fun. That's what this is all about, and I'll see everybody in the next video. Thanks for watching. Happy animating.